Okay, YouTubers, this is my update on my Shelby. I've not been doing much with it lately. I've been busy with other things and haven't really had the money. But the current state of my Shelby, as you can see, is quite gutted. It's gutted because it is a Minnesota-Wisconsin car, and like all Minnesota-Wisconsin cars, it is completely rusted out. I can stop like the Flintstones at the moment. Smaller holes in the back I've already patched with sheet metal. I've got to redo some of my welding. Obviously I'm not that good at what I'm doing. Pretty amateur. But, well, whatever, you know. Maybe I'll be able to do it better later on, a few years down the road, and this will hopefully get me along. So, yeah, that's about it. That's all the wiring for the rear speakers and the CD changer, because I have a factory Chrysler CD changer in here. Amp wires are up there. The other change that I did while doing all of this was switching out the dash to an older style like this, which has a clock, which is kind of cool. So some funky shit to be done with that. In the normal center console that sits right here, there's a little flip out map light thing that don't really get used anyways. I'm actually going to turn that into two little gauge pods where I will put my engine temperature and oil pressure. I have the gauge for the temperature already. It's not here, and I still had to get an oil pressure one because the old gauge cluster here just gave me an amperage gauge, which I got a monkey with, and the fuel gauge, and that's pretty much it. But I know it's stupid to pull out the cluster that has all the gauges in it, but I like doing things different, and I like this gauge cluster. So by putting those two little ones down there, we'll be good to go. Until then, I had an extra gauge cluster that I used here to basically make this, which is really easy to do actually. If you find an old cluster in the yard or something, and say you want to make something like this, put it in the shade here. For testing equipment, I was actually able just to cut the freaking circuit board, and then I traced all the wires and just left the ones that I needed. You know, so I mean, it's pretty simple. There's a negative a feed for the lights, because yes, the lights do work on it still. Then the blue with white is the ignition feed source, so of course that goes to the voltage gauge, and of course supplies power and everything else. And then you've got your temp wire and your oil pressure wire. So it's actually really quite simple. It's a very simple gauge cluster in general. I haven't started it in a while, but a battery's been disconnected, so it should have enough juice. So we'll see. Let the pump feed up a bit. Give her a couple of pumps. With any luck, she'll start right up. There we go, idle. Choke completely open. There was no need to turn it on. Oh yeah, blue lighting underneath. Had it there for a very long time. Still works. Yeah. So she's still running pretty good. Ugh. Like I said, it's been sitting for a long time, and it's so hot out I have a hard time getting anything done because I'm so German. Other bits of detail and information. Obviously you can see there's not much to the wiring that goes through the body of this thing. And on the side I've also got this little red wire. The 84s were too old to have a third brake light, so I got a spoiler with the third brake light in it from an 87 and added a third brake light because I like the extra little bit of safety. Other than that, I mean, these things are really simple. Yep, just chumming away. Little shaky, she hasn't been running so long. You can tell it's been sitting here for a while. That tire is completely flat. And bolted, because it was on the front and the alignment is fucked up. So, yeah, I've got a bit of work to do. Oh yeah, the gauges. air reading. Temperature's starting to climb up there. Good voltage, good oil pressure. So that was really simple to do, you know. Main brake cable's broken, so of course it's absolutely useless. I pretty much just leave it there for the look. On my wife's charger I removed it, but on this thing I left it in. But yeah, it's just the floors. It's really bad on these things. 13-inch spare tires, so if I ever get a flat on the front, I have to rotate one of my tires because a 13-inch wheel will not fit on the front of a Shelby because the Shelby has bigger brakes. I actually just did that to my wife's charger. She had smaller brakes on it, and I upgraded to bigger brakes from a LeBaron. So yeah, basically update on the Shelby anyways. So you can see the fucking thing is I got these little red lights like a Mazda 3 that are connected to the dome light. And I'm actually going to hook them up to a different wire. Right now they turn off and the dome light turns off, but these vehicles, for anybody who's interested to screw around with something, this connector here took me a while to figure out what the heck it was. And when I was first trying it, I had power on the yellow and a ground on the ground, and I didn't know what the heck it went for. It wasn't plugged into anything. And so I plugged my clock, jammed my clock wire into it to test the clock, and the clock was working. And then when I came and checked it the other day, I noticed the clock wasn't working anymore. I was wondering what the heck was up. And I opened the door, and when I was looking at it, I noticed the clock started working again. I was like, well, that's weird. And I thought about it for a second. And I closed the door while I was in it, and after 10 seconds, the clock stopped. That wire is for if your car has a light that lights up the ignition switch, which these do not have. So it's really kind of a fun little toy, because that also answered my question. I can't see it, but there's a little round silver cylinder in there. It gets really freaking hot, and I never knew what the hell it was, but it was always hot, and I could unplug it, and the car would run and everything, and I would have no idea why the heck, you know, what the heck it did. Turns out that's for that thing. It's thermal based. You turn on the dome light by opening the door, so turning on the dome light, and power gets put to it. It heats up, makes a connection, and then it stays, you know, hot because, well, it's thermal based. So when the dome light shuts off, it starts to cool off, and as soon as it cools off, it breaks the connection. It's just a thermal switch. So it's really kind of cool. So plenty of ideas you can do for it. I use the same thing in the shadow here. Get my key. For this little light right here. And the little LED here shines on my aftermarket ignition switch. So if I close the door and wait, like I said, about 10 seconds, it should turn off. Sorry if the camera's a little shaky. I haven't had any caffeine today, and I get the jitters when I don't have any. So yeah, you know, if I open the door, takes a second, heats up, connection's made, it's on, close the door, and after 10 seconds it'll turn off. Yeah, I just kind of had some fun. I put it right there to shine on the ignition switch. And I relocated the cigarette lighter, which was there, to right down in here, which is kind of nice. And I have the cigarette lighter plunger for it somewhere, because it still works. I use the same wiring, I just rerouted it, you know, just for fun. The cool thing is, you know, with this little cubby in the door, I can hide something in there, you know, that I'm charging, like my phone, or cover the door up, and then you won't see any wires, you won't see the phone. Just a silly little side thing, so, you know, even if somebody wasn't to do something silly like me and relocate an ignition switch for no real reason, they could add another cigarette lighter right there. And this cigarette lighter is from Plymouth Acclaim or Dodge Spirit, so they're easy to find and really easy to mount. So yeah, everything's good on this end. This thing's been running a lot better. My voltage has been better since I switched the alternator. It's finally starting to accelerate like it's supposed to, and it's getting about 27 miles to the gallon now. So, not too shabby finally. I've got a hole plug to fill this in, but I haven't quite taken the time to put it in yet and fuck around with it. But yeah, it's my basic vehicle update. So yeah, doors open, takes a second, bling, there's the light. Lots of fun, shines right on the ignition switch. Well, take it easy for now, YouTube friends, and we'll see you all later.